Hello and welcome to this special conversation on the Squirrels.in. Nepal has been burning now for the last few days. The events which have unfolded in Nepal have led to a lot of uncomfortable questions being raised here back home in India. Well, Sudeep and I have been looking at all pictures which have been coming from Nepal, all the ground level feedback which is coming, and it really makes you wonder, what is it about Nepal's polity that at regular intervals we keep seeing these bouts of political upheaval, political uncertainty. For many years, we thought that the political events in Nepal were all being driven by India. Now, there is a feeling that because there is greater Chinese investments in Nepal, well, could this be a bigger geopolitical play at risk there in Nepal? And what is the probability of we in India feeling the after effects or the heat of what's happened in Nepal? So Sudeep, I want to kick off this conversation first by trying to understand. A lot of people, have been asking us this question, that what is it about Nepal? Political upheavals and Nepal. First, draw a history of sorts. Why is political upheavals, political chaos so frequent in Nepal?
So, one thing we tend to forget is that Nepal was actually a monarchy till about 50 years ago. 1950, I think 1951 is when they gave up their monarchy. Then there was a constitutional monarchy, much like Britain, they became a constitutional monarchy. Then, they flirted with another set of, there was another revolution and another rebellion, much like, not as violent as this, but there was. Then the Naxalite, the communists came in. The communists also had a set of their own rules, which they tried to follow, and that also created another set of instabilities. Then, for a country which is at 14 governments in 20 years, I mean, there must be a reason why it happens. One of the biggest reasons why it happens is that, we are a big country. We talk about caste and, we talk about religion and creed and so on and so forth, Nepal is a tiny country, but Nepal is also rift. I mean, it's riven with caste and creed and religion and so on and so forth, even for a small country. So, a government coming in, when it needs to look at all the ethnic requirements, caste requirements, after all, at the end of the day, people, if they're not that much aware, in much like in India, there are two dominant castes in Nepal, the Brahmins and the Kshetris. Okay, I think, if I'm not mistaken, between the Brahmins and the Kshetris, they make up about some 35% of the overall vote. Now, if you have those two dominant castes, the lower castes and all get left out. The Madhesis, who are towards the south of the country, bordering all along Bihar, they always felt deprived. So there's always this, the hill folk, plain folk, ethnic, rivalries, bifurcations. It's a kind of a unstable situation that nobody's been able to basically put their foot down and say that, yes, I'm going to solve this problem.
That is that the reason? And sometimes I wonder, just ask yourself the number of times this word Gen Z has been used over the last few days, right? I mean, everybody who's out there is saying, I'm Gen Z, और मुझे गुस्सा है, मैं नाराज हूँ, इसलिए I'm up in arms. Now, there is the caste cauldron that you're talking about. There is the regional question also, which is being spoken about. There are upper reaches of Nepal versus lower reaches of Nepal, much like what we have in India.
Right.
I mean, there's politics of South, there's politics of North. Nepal may be a smaller territory, but the kind of contradictions which exist within the smaller territory. I'm just left wondering, Sudeep, even now, when we saw the army chief do that press conference, right? There was a photograph behind the army chief, and many thought that this was a reflection or a reiteration of the fact that Nepalese still swear by the monarchical rule. How do you look at that in the context of the historical relevance of it?
So the monarchy, much like the British, where the monarchy actually is only a ceremonial role. Here in Nepal, there was at one point of time a kind of a thing that, maybe the king was much better, or maybe the monarchs was much better. And the last king, he also made some comments about this, that maybe it could have been just me if I had been there, not directly like that, but suggesting that had it been me, maybe we wouldn't have been in this situation. But in reality, I don't think the monarchy is really coming back in any way. Nobody took that.
You don't think so?
Even that was not taken very seriously. The Gen Z situation is not, is it a monarchy issue? No, it is not a monarchy issue. Some people said it's a Hindu Rashtra issue. It is not a Hindu Rashtra issue. If you look at the economy of Nepal dispassionately, it is largely a remittance-driven economy, right? Nepalese going across the world. They work much like our famous Keralites, work across the world and send money back. That is what is sustaining large parts of Nepal's economy. But what is happening is the job situation in Nepal. You'll be surprised to know. I didn't know this till I started researching this. Nepal's economy has actually been growing. I mean, not like India's, obviously, but Nepal's economy has actually been growing. World Bank statistics tell you that it has grown from last year. It's probably going to grow faster this year if this hadn't happened. But the fact of the matter is that job creation is not happening. So younger people, either they look abroad and go, or they come to India, and frankly speaking, as bad as it sounds and as terrible as it is, they do some menial jobs in India. That's what they're left with. That is really the reason why, a large reason why this and much like other.
So it's funny that you say this. I was in Chandigarh a few days back, and this is exactly the argument which is being made, that even the state of Punjab, as rich as it may be, today is facing a massive government revenue deficit for the simple reason that all the money which is coming in via remittances. So people may have big houses, but who's going to build that road in front of the house?
Correct.
Who's going to take care of the sewers and the nalas? And maybe that's one reason why the desilting of riverbeds, which requires government money, is not taking place, because 70 to 80% of government's money is only going in running of the government itself.
Right.
So out of a state which has a total, let's say, capital outlay of 1 lakh crores, if you're spending 80 to 90,000 only on running of the government itself for salaries and all, there's hardly anything which is left for innovations or anything else. Maybe something similar happening in Nepal, that if the remittances is the biggest source of economic development, what is a government, what is a department going to do if you have to do something which is optically new, which is optically working for the benefit of the new generation people? Where are the factories? In Bangladesh, for instance, neighboring Bangladesh, right? Biggest exporter, its exports have outpast India, surpassed India. The big export there. Nepal, you were using uncharitable words, but that's the truth also.
I mean, that's the truth. I don't want to be, I don't think Nepalese people deserve that. But that, and you brought up Bangladesh, very interesting statistic. Bangladesh, if you look at purchasing power parity, by way of purchasing power parity, Bangladesh is twice of what Nepal is by per capita income. Twice. Nepal is at, I think, $5,000 in PPP terms per capita. Bangladesh is 10,000 or just above 10,000, and India is at 11,000. So even vis-a-vis Bangladesh, you are half of what it is. So you're exactly right. Where's the industry? There is zero industry. All the investment into industry in Nepal has been done by India. All of it. I mean, 35% of FDI is held by Indians. So 1/3 of your FDI has been held by Indian companies.
Well, here's the interesting story. A couple of years back, there was a big solar power project and there was a hydropower project. Both these projects were being given to a big Indian industrialist. The big Indian industrialist invested a lot of money but got stuck. Why? Because of the forever changing political fortunes. What I want to understand, Sudeep, is that between 1951 to 1990, see, democratically elected governments, which may well have come into play, they've not really been stable. Is it lack of economic stability which is impacting politics here? What could possibly explain is what I'm trying to understand between a potential relationship between economic instability and political instability.
I think it's kind of the snake eating its own tail, because there is no political instability, because, there are coalitions, unlike in India, where coalition governments have survived and actually done very well. There is simply no economy for a coalition government to build there. And because of that, instability, political instability, there is economic instability.
Mm.
And however much India has been a friend to Nepal and has made investments, India also plays its own games, because India looks at China and says, "This is my buffer."
Yeah.
China is playing its own games in the Nepalese backyard. Now, all of this makes a completely explosive situation, where governments are not fully, they don't get the full mandate. If they get a mandate, they are squabbling among themselves. There's massive corruption. I mean, you go to Nepal, you go to Kathmandu, you figure out, some of the parts are beautiful and posh, and the rest of it is just, slums. I mean, I went to Nepal, Kathmandu, 2-3 years ago, maybe. I remember getting out of the airport. First of all, my God, that airport itself is a nightmare.
Yeah.
But I got out of the airport and I said, wow, I didn't expect Kathmandu to be like this. The wide roads going towards the city. But typically, that wide road finishes in another 4-5 kilometers. After that, you're down to narrow roads again. This new mayor, the mayor who got elected, who was supposed to be the Balen Shah. What did he come in and do? Why did he make a difference and why did he become popular? He started cleaning up the sewers and the roads. I mean, you didn't even have that basic kind of a service in Kathmandu.
But why is that? Here's the country. It's not as if that it doesn't have. I mean, you've spoken about remittances. It's not as if that there are no other sources of revenue. Tourism is a big business. Hospitality, tourism. I mean,
but tourism itself is, because of this instability, tourism gets hit.
Now tourism will get hit. So, what could it be that makes Nepal such an easy playground for countries like India and China? For the longest time, for the last 5 years, I've been hearing wherever I've gone in corridors apart that there is greater Chinese investment which is now playing out in Nepal. India, as you rightly point out, wants its own piece of the pie. The other sort of definition of Nepal is that it's a money launderer's paradise.
Right.
I mean, money is always moving from Nepal to different corners of the world. And unlike Dubai, which has converted money movement into solid, legitimate business, thereby positioning itself as a global business hub, Nepal has not managed to do that. Is it to do with the fact that there have been a finite number of political characters at play who've either been propped up by India or by China, like this Balen Shah you're talking about, right? He studied in India, but his views about India are all too well known. Wouldn't qualify to be a specific friend of India. No. Is it the India-China factor which is consistently played in Nepal, which has led us to a situation like this?
No, so to go back to the beginning of your question, what makes Nepal a playground for bigger powers like in India or China? It's for that. I think there are 3 simple reasons. One, it's a tiny country. At the end of the day, it's a really small country. 2, it's stuck between 2 big brothers. One is China, one is India. I mean, China was not being big brother for a long time. India was being the big brother, and India was being sometimes helpful, sometimes not helpful.
Right.
And number 3 is that, honestly speaking, apart from tourism, there isn't anything much to sustain Nepal. Which means basically you are in a position of weakness all the time. Nobody wants to hear that their country is in a position of weakness all the time, but that's the reality. Given the fact that there is China and there is India, and you are in the middle, there is nothing much you can do. If tomorrow China wants to come in and take over Nepal, as they are in many ways, there is very little you can do. If tomorrow India wants to go and take over Nepal, there is, frankly speaking, very little that Nepal can do.
Well, there's the other remarkable characteristic of Nepal. It's royalty. I mean, oh boy, considerable beauty. I mean,
Yes.
look at the people there. Look at the women in particular. I mean, it's beauty personified.
Of course, Nepalese are known to be very,
very pretty, very charming, very soft-spoken.
I don't think the men are very soft-spoken, but the men are very openly friendly, from what I saw. But the royal family itself, in that Narayan Hiti massacre that happened in 2002, I think it was 2002.
Yes.
I mean, that really blew apart any notions of stability or any kind of this thing in Nepal. What happened in that massacre, in that, and after that, King Birendra came and tried to take over. Then another coup. I mean, it's a constant series of unstable governments or heads or people who control the state. I mean, which is why probably Nepal is where it is.
Yeah, I mean, look at 2002 to 2025, right? Someone who calls himself or herself Gen Z, like, we did a video on squirrels.in, and I was absolutely zapped when I looked at that picture of these schoolgirls, right, with water bottles tied to their waist, in their school uniforms, with their identity cards, all coming out and dancing around. This guy who was saying Nepal ka neta khadi mein, gadi mein, or gadi gai khadi mein, and that was the typical translation of the protesters. For someone who was born, let's say in 2000, right, in 2002, this massacre takes place, right? In 2008, you have a so-called version of democracy all the way till 2025. So for these 23 years, 2 decades, not a small time by any stretch of imagination, someone who was born in the year 2000 would have only seen scenes of chaos, scenes of instability in Nepal. Does it explain, does it justify? I'm just thinking, could that Gen Z have been so agitated, so aggravated, that they've resorted to the kind of behavior that we've seen, with former prime ministers, relatives, former foreign ministers, finance ministers being beaten black and blue. And we saw that picture on a helicopter. I mean, just imagine where else would you have seen this? The closest that comes to my mind was in Afghanistan, when the Taliban were running away, when the Americans were leaving Afghanistan and the Taliban regime was coming back. We saw how Afghan citizens wanted to get on those B-52 and American transport planes. And look at what happened. In Nepal, something similar now being done by the politicians. What could it have been? Gen Z responding like this? Is it because of this spell of 23 years?
I'll give you a small statistic which will probably explain to, I also understood it that way. 2001 is, sorry, not 2002, 2001 is when the Narayanhiti, that massacre happened. Then all sorts of instability happened. 2001 is exactly 24 years ago, right? The unemployment figure for people between 15 and 24, I'm saying 18 and 24, 15 might be a little young, but 15 and 24 according to World Bank is 20.1, it is almost 21%. That means 1 in 5 of those people who were born when the Narayanhiti massacre happened, palace massacre happened, are without a job even today. So, how does one otherwise, that frustration that has been building. And when you see video, and social media has also played a big part in setting this up, because where else do you see, how else will you see the sons and daughters of ministers and former royal family enjoying themselves in Dubai or New York, or, having a great time in Oxford or wherever they go to study.
Much like Pakistan, right? I mean, isn't that what we see in Pakistan?
So that anger, obviously from the time of, and constant instability, and the inability of any government to give you what you want, which is basically jobs and security, eventually it would have burst out, and that's what it is.
So if you look at it, 2005, King Gyanendra attempts, he wants to seize absolute power. Then in 2006, the Jan Andolan Part 2, People's Movement, which was backed by Maoist mainstream party alliances, which finally forced Gyanendra actually to restore parliament and pave the way for the 2008 Republican declaration of sorts. From 2008 till 2025, unemployment rate of over 20%, as you're rightly pointing out, 1 in 5. And Nepo kids.
Kids, exactly.
I mean, the Nepo kids, where did this come from?
This is where it came from, Nepo kids.
So in these last 20 years, actually, Nepo kids growing, unemployment rate growing, and economy stuttering, only because of remittances.
Only on remittances, and because also India played its own role, and then China plays its own role. A lot of infrastructure building that was happening was on loan. The loan, and this is a classic Chinese diplomatic debt trap. But Nepo kids is exactly what this is. When people take selfies and pose on Instagram videos in fancy places, and I am sitting in Kathmandu or wherever I am, in Nepal, and saying that, I don't even have a job. When all I have is this phone and I'm looking at these people, it makes me angry. At some point, that anger has to burst out. That anger burst out when the government shut down social media. Because that was my only, pressure valve, which was releasing pressure, was this phone in my hand. That also got banned.
I just want to, for a moment, relate it to a video, and we tweeted about it, of Tej Pratap Yadav, Lalu Yadav's son in Bihar. Tej Pratap Yadav goes to Raghopur, his ancestral constituency, Rabri Devi's constituency. She's contested elections from there. Now, Tej Pratap Yadav, you'll see this video, he's distributing these food packets on a boat. And I tweeted about it, that what appealed to me the most was not the fact that here was a person who's this estranged son of Lalu Yadav's family and he's bitching out, his elder brother, former deputy chief minister and former minister, Tejasvi Yadav, who's also now the leader of the RJD. But the fact that the first time I went to Raghopur was in the year 2000. From 2000 to 2025, pretty much every Bihar election takes me there, and maybe this time also we'll end up going there. The reality of Raghopur has remained the same. But you have a Tejasvi Yadav who's spending his holidays in Singapore, in London. You have Misa Bharti who's moved on to plusher farmhouses in Delhi. You have who's funding Tej Pratap Yadav at the end of the day. Where is all this money coming from? Nepo kids you're talking about, people getting angry there in in Nepal. And I'm wondering whether there is anything called Nepo kids here. The BJP has created an entire industry around Rahul Gandhi, right? Really, wrongly. I mean, that's a different question. But is that word Nepo kids backed by 20% unemployment? Is it such a strong factor which would have spurred all these Gen Z people to come out on the roads and beat the hell out of all these?
I mean, evidently, I don't think that the kids school kids and college kids came out and beat up people. I don't think, maybe it wasn't them, Though, a
mob is a mob.
Mob is a mob. And that mob can be, taken over by lots of other people. I mean, there would be people who were looking for a political opportunity. I saw videos of people beating up the finance minister. From one former prime minister was thrown off an embankment and into a river. None of those people who were doing it looked like school kids or college kids. Frankly speaking, it was obviously people. It's not just these people who were frustrated, didn't have a job and frustrated and were out on the streets. Obviously, if there's 20% unemployment in just that one cohort, which is 15 to 24, there must be, I'm sure there is, I haven't looked up the figure, but I'm sure there must be unemployment in older people as well. All that frustration which was pent up exploded onto the streets, and offices were set on fire, political party offices were set on fire, Supreme Court building was attacked, Parliament was attacked. It is unprecedented. It's unprecedented, and all because the safety valve of the pressure cooker valve of social media was banned.
Well, I wonder whether you remember that movie Rang De Basanti of Amir Khan, right? I mean, what happens in the end? I mean, here's a bunch of youngsters, bunch of students who are upset with whatever has gone on in the country, and they end up taking siege of All India Radio. If you haven't, it was a fantastic movie which was made by Rakesh Om Prakash Mehra. You should see that, and you will see semblances of a comparison, perhaps, between what is happening in Nepal now and what had happened then. But the final point, Sudeep, that I want to address today is the caste question. Suddenly, there is one more narrative which has been pushed out, that actually this is a result of Brahminical superiority in Nepal, that the entire decision-making mechanism rests with the Brahmins, and this is like, a rise of the peasant class, a rise of the backwards which is coming out and hitting out. I mean, is there any merit to that the Brahmins, is it the Hindu assertion or a Brahmin assertion?
No, I don't think it's a Hindu assertion. I mean, it's a Hindu. Somebody tweeted today saying, not today or yesterday, they said, it is Hindus who are fighting Hindus and overthrowing a Hindu government. Why should anybody have a problem with that? I mean, it's just a joke. But the fact of the matter is, Nepal, till really recently, was officially the only Hindu country in the world. But is it Hindu identity? No. People, whoever I've spoken to regarding this, nobody's brought up this Hindu identity thing. It's in some parts in India, in social media, that is talked about. Is it Brahmin? Is it against Brahminism? I don't think it's against Brahminism either. I don't think it's, the 20% that we talked about who are jobless. I'm sure a lot of them are Brahmins as well. It is far more fundamental than, is it a Hindu assertion or against Brahminism? It is an economic, it is a crisis in Nepal. The point is, from here, where does the crisis take Nepal? Does it take it further into the arms of China? Or do we move in at some point and say, look, ultimately it is Nepal and India who are natural partners, and not Nepal and China who are natural partners?
Well, that will be in the second episode of the series of Sudeep and Bhupen Explain. Because what we really want to do is to look at a story from multiple dimensions, through numbers, through data, typically things which will get lost out, in the hurly-burly of field reportage and the desire to break news. Here, we just want to take it easy, we want to slow it down, and we want you to process the facts, the numbers, the data. Let them tell the story. If you've liked this, well, you can send us comments on our YouTube handle, or you can subscribe to the Squirrels on Twitter. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for watching.